You're listening to We Deepen Media.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder and CEO of We Deepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified professional love coach and intuitive matchmaker. If you haven't lately, go to wedeepen.com, check out all types of upcoming social and transformational experiences. I weave all these experiences together with my intention is to inspire more meaningful, loving relationships. So I go out in the world and I find the best tantra, human connection events, like high vibe experiences that are high bar. And when I say high bar, meaning that like they're well intended, well put together. Typically it's brands or facilitators who have experience and these reviews that are changing people's lives and giving some of the most beautiful love stories. I'm all about a great love story. So check out wedeepen.com. You can see the biohacking conference is coming up, which I'm recording this in the top of June 2023. So it's happening in a couple weeks. It's an annual event. So if you miss it, the 9th annual biohacking conference, there'll be one next year. Also, we have a retreat happening in Croatia in September 23rd through the 27th. There are going to be 30 people gathering, 15 men, 15 women who happen to be currently single. And we are going to become comrades for our love lives. We are partnering with Aboutly, which does a brain assessment to help you better understand yourself, to help you better understand your partner. And when I say brain assessment, a lot of the quizzes out there, whether you've taken the love language, erotic blueprint, your Myers-Briggs, even, looking at like your human design chart, they give you a wealth of information. But what's different about Aboutly is it helps you to better understand how your brain assesses information, the input and output, kind of everything that happens in between, for essentially how you're then perceiving reality and how somebody else perceives reality, and taking that information and teaching you about each other. So everybody who's going to go on this boat is going to get their brain assessed. We're going to do some experimenting around connecting you with partners to, for you to better learn about your brain and who it's most compatible with. We're not in all of these, I am an intuitive matchmaker, and there's no in way that I'm aiming to play God. We are more of providing experiences that can elevate your intimacy journey. I believe that life is love, and it's a whole entire journey of unraveling your fears, the negativity, the things that are holding you back from being the most authentic version of yourself, coupled with ever increasing acts of sharing, because you give to who you love. So this Croatia boat is going to be definitely, we're calling it is the love boat, and it is a big love experience. And also Francesca Gentile, who is a expert in BDSM, kink, sacred sexuality. She is going to be joining us on this super yacht through Croatia as well. So check that out at wedeepen.com, and you can see all the other upcoming festivals. There's even a course there, Relationship Renegades. And I'm going to be adding the Deeper Dating Ken Page, a psychotherapist, has a deeper dating course that is going to be up on the network shortly. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, give it 5 stars. It helps more people find it, helps me continue to record it. Also helps me gather more people to get together in real life, because I love sharing, interesting topics and ideas and people with you in this virtual realm. What I love even more is being in person with you and sharing experiences and then studying and learning love together. Today's episode is, it's spontaneous. If you've been listening for some time, you may have been hearing my journey in discovering and playing in the kink space. And I have a lover who recently had shared with me that he has a fantasy about watching. Actually, this came up between us. He was like, I want to watch you have sex with somebody else. And it just, it spoke my intrigue, and I was very intrigued, and curious about who's ever done this. Like, I've never had a conversation with somebody that they've, played deeper into this realm. And thank goodness there's the Esther Perel discussion group. So I posted in the group to ask, about has anyone ever had this experience? What is the psychology behind this experience? And there was a few responses, but one that just stuck with me. I mean, it was like a rave. And this is who we're gonna speak with today. Sydney, thank you for being here. And I'm gonna bring you in, but I just want to share what you said. So I asked this question about the psychology and who has had this type of experience. And I was thinking in my mind that men were going to respond. Men were going to respond and say how amazing and how they envision that. And instead it was women that responded first. And you wrote, "Oh, yes, please. I am highly visual when it comes to sex. Watching my partner with another woman was so erotic for me. I got to see and admire him from a different perspective. His facial expressions, his touch, all of it was such a turn on. I don't know if I can even put it into words. His confidence with another woman was empowering and intoxicating. My trust level with him soared through the ceiling in that moment. Just talking about it is making my heart pound out of my chest."
Absolutely.
Like, wow, who would have thought? And when I say, thank God I had this group, because before we pushed record on this podcast, I was sharing, some of the things that I've even been experiencing in this connection. Who am I going to tell? Like, I have friends from they would be like, "Christina, what are you doing with your life? Like, you want to have a family and children, and you're now in this kink space." And yeah. And I definitely have stories within that I'm discerning, and I'm like, don't tell this person might handle it or not. And so here you are. I'm so open. Thank you for being willing to jump on and discuss this with me.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm happy to be here and enlighten you.
So first, before we jump in, can you give me some relational background on you, not just necessarily in your current relationship, but historically?
Yes. So, weirdly, I have always been very open sexually. And I say weirdly because I grew up in a family that was quite strict, didn't show affection, things like that. But I can remember from the age of 7, had a prolific kink scene in my head. So with my Barbie dolls. So then once I get through high school, I actually didn't have sex until I was 18. And it opened up a whole world for me because I was really shy before that. And after that, I found this confidence in myself that I had power through expressing myself this way. And so I had a couple of relationships where we were in the swing scene when I lived out in Colorado. So I was able to explore my attraction to women and explore group sex and swapping and threesomes and things like that. And it wasn't the right partner at the time. I wasn't really in love with him. So I felt it was quite easy for me to do those things because I didn't have this special bond with him that you would, that I was wanting with someone, but didn't have with him. And so things fizzled out with that guy, and I ended up meeting the man that I married for 20 years, but he didn't like my previous life. So I had to be vanilla, and I squashed all of that in exchange for stability and friendship. And in the end, that wasn't a good choice for me. I encourage everyone to be authentic and just live how you want to live rather than how you think you should live. Mm. So, because I thought, well, if I start a family, I need to be an upstanding citizen or whatever, and just be an adult and put all this other stuff away and do the relationship thing. And so I divorced him, and then connected with my current partner, David, and we connected over talking about these things because he had a similar thing in his previous marriage where he was stifled and squashed all these things that he was interested in. So then we decided, well, hey, we'll just be like a booty call and start, living out these fantasies that we want to do. And it turns out we have like the deepest connection I've ever had with another human. And it's all because we are our authentic selves with each other. So then we started talking about inviting another woman in our bed together. And it was just so exciting. Like it amped up just the sex between us two for a while, just talking about it and then trying to find the right fit, which we did find someone maybe 2 weeks now ago where so David has never had a threesome before where I have. So this was kind of like I popped his cherry with that. So yeah, I don't know if you want me to just dive right into that whole.
So this is new then. This is fresh.
It is, yes.
Okay. Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay. So you meet this woman on Field, the app.
Yeah.
And David just kind of has been talking to her through the app and shows me pictures of her. And I was like, yeah, she's cute. Let's meet her. And so we meet for drinks. And there's a pretty good chemistry. She has the same sense of humor as I do, like a 10-year-old boy. And, so we were kind of laughing over some funny things that have happened to her sexually that were just stories of themselves. And we get to the end of the night and she wants to come over to our house. And I'm like, oh, whoa, slow down. This is not on a first date. So she walks us to my car and she ends up just like making out with me in front of all these people that are out drinking wine on a restaurant patio, which was pretty hot. And so I'm like, okay, this is going well. So then we invite her over for a second date to our place. And it was going quite well for the first part of it. Was going really well. It kind of took a weird turn later, but in the beginning, so we were, her and I were like making out in front of him. Actually, we were like laying across his lap, just like, kind of like on display for him. And, I think what was really hot is that usually with him, I'm submissive, but with women, I'm pretty forward. And so I was just kind of taking control of that part of it. And that part, I think, really turned him on to see that side of me that, because it's like role reversal in a way. And so, the clothes start coming off and we're in the living room and, the other woman was telling David, give me some time with Sydney, and so he just kind of backed off and watched for a little bit. We were doing our thing. And so we join in, have David join in then, and she starts giving him a blowjob. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so hot, because I could see like the facial expressions from, because, usually with a dick in your face, you're not really looking like at their face to see how they're really enjoying it, and so now I get to see from this other angle, and I'm like, holy crap, it was just so exciting. And
were you participating in touch as well?
Yes, with her. And so then she's, I'm like watching her technique and things like that, and his response to it. And then we move on to the bedroom, and like, where we kind of taking turns, but then also like she's, giving him oral, I'm giving her oral at the same time, and kind of a swapping around of that kind of thing. And then he has penetrative sex with her. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like I just stopped what I was doing and just stared and watched, because it was just like, I can imagine, like, I know how he touches me and the things that he does. And then seeing it was like watching porn. And so I'm like highly visual. So for me, I was like, yeah, get in there. Like, I want to see this. And, yeah, so I don't even know how else to describe that really. It was just so erotic. I wanted it to go on for hours. It was amazing. What you would normally think is that, oh, I'm going to be jealous, like, what, he looks like he's enjoying it too much, or, you would think that you would analyze like, oh, if he gives me that look, but he's giving her that look, maybe it doesn't mean anything. But that's not at all what I experienced with him. It was more like, for some reason, like I was trying to put into words, like why in that moment, my trust for him went up instead of down. And I really think that it was, a lot of it was some of the aftercare, but a lot of it also was just seeing that, that he is like capable of caring for more than one person, but that I still know that I hold a special place in his heart. Like this is so hard to explain. And I've put this into better words to David, and now I should have written down what I said, but but it was just I think I trust him more because I didn't have those negative feelings of like jealousy and feeling less than, or that I wasn't special. All those feelings never came. Now, those feelings I have had with other people. So I really feel like we have a good foundation of communication and a good, solid relationship base before doing something like that was really helpful. So with past experiences, the relationship part just wasn't there. And so then you're left feeling like you were just a piece of meat, or, just something to be idolized rather than cherished. And so with David, I feel cherished.
How long were you guys dating before this experience happened?
It's only been a little over a year.
Okay. And what were the conversations like before? Because sometimes we go into the scenes and it's like no penetrative sex, or, right, here's like the boundaries. Like, did you guys do any of that in any type of formal way, or?
Yeah, we did. We talked about, like, I said I didn't want it to be where like he's just off in the corner staring at us like some weirdo. I wanted him to be involved, and that if we found a woman that was really just looking for one-on-one with a woman without the man being involved, that wasn't going to be a good fit for us. And, we both want to be able to do like some BDSM and kinkier stuff with this other person, but you have to build up that trust first. So we both agreed that like, we're not going to just jump into that on the first time that we're with someone. That's going to be a gradual thing. We talked about, the safety things, like testing and whether or not condoms are being used and things like that. And I think the only thing that was off the table for me is I just don't like butt sex. So I was like, if you're into that and want to do that with someone else, this is the great time to do that. But I'm not into that. And he was,
so you don't want to peg him.
Right. Yeah, I really don't. And so the woman that we were with has done pegging and was kind of into that, but we were like, no, because he's not into it either. So that's why I kind of think that it's probably isn't going to go further with this woman, because she was into some other kinks that were really outside what we were into. Things like urination and stuff like that. Like I was like, I don't want to kink shame you. It's not what I'm into. So.
And yeah. What is her driver purely sex related, or is there a level of intimacy as well that she's interested?
That's where it got weird, because she portrayed that she was just in it for the sex, and she was like talking a lot about other partners that she had and what she would do with them and things of that nature. But then when we're in the middle of it, she kind of breaks down and says, well, I just want to be loved. And I was like, oh no, because this is kind of a departure of how she portrayed herself. And then she kind of went a step further and tried to introduce some dominating of David, which we had not discussed before. And I was like, oh no, it's time for us to stop this. So we kind of had to put a stop to it at that point, because she was overstepping a lot of boundaries.
So it sounds too, and having that experience, I imagine that brings you guys closer.
It did.
To go through the navigational process of all of it. I mean, I look at it's like this erotic transformational workshop.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
You like hit your edges and you're
right. You're like, what are you into? What are you not? What do you want to try that you haven't done? That's all the stuff that we discussed. It was great. So
when you would say, back, you're 7 years old and always like sexually open. And you said something about that feeling like you got power from, I find that people have that, women will have that. And then something will happen. I don't know if it's external stimuli will then shift it to make it a negative.
Yes.
Like it'll all of a sudden become like shameful. They only want me for the sex.
Right.
And so some distortion happens around that.
Yeah. And I did experience that. And I think that it was societal, like people are calling you, a slut, or promiscuous but if you're a man and you have many partners, it's okay. But if you're a woman with many partners, there's something wrong with you. And so I think that that's when I went into this vanilla relationship with my ex-husband, was because of societal pressures to be a certain way. And I really regret that, because up until that point, I've been very confident and very open and was like, fuck you and your stupid beliefs. And then I don't understand why I shifted. And I do feel that it was because I had been contemplating having a family and stuff like that. And all the patriarchal things that you've learned throughout your life come crashing in. And I think that it was a lot of self-shame. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so the relationship that you had where you and this other significant other were swinging,
Mm-hmm.
You said that there was something in that connection that you didn't have the full experience of love, was lacking inside.
Yeah.
What was that? Why do you think that was showing up?
The way the relationship started was that I had met him online, and it was like back in 97. So, I had AOL, and, he was also on that. And like my computer was so old, I couldn't even send a photo online. So I had to send it snail mail. And the pictures that he sent me were actually 10 years younger than what he actually was. And I think like he told me that if he had met me in a bar, he would not have crossed the room to talk to me because I was not his type. And I was like, dude, same, like meeting you now, like you told me you had a swimmer's body and you had a full head of hair, and you're not those things. You're a smoker, you ride a Harley, you've got a child you didn't tell me about, and so there was like a lot of lies. And so there was no trust there. So it was very hard to let myself be open with him. I was protecting myself.
That makes sense. And then you go into a marriage for 20 years.
Yeah.
A monogamous marriage?
Yeah. That was hard. I don't think he ever trusted me because he knew of my past. I think he was always afraid that I was going to cheat on him, that I was going to leave him. And his ex-wife had left him for another woman. So there was that. But I thought, we could work through that stuff. And then I found out he's an avoidant and doesn't want to work through anything, doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to admit anything. And it just became too much. So like when COVID hit and I'm stuck home with him, he's working from home and I'm working from home. And I'm like, oh my God, I hate this man. Not that I hated him, I just hated our relationship and how I hated myself for not sticking by what I really wanted out of life. And then I found out that my mom got Alzheimer's, and I was like, oh shit, what if that happens to me? That means I might have 20 years left of my life before my brain is mush. How am I going to spend those 20 years? I'm going to spend it with this man that is a good friend, but not what I want. Or am I going to just give that up and just go out and make it happen and find what makes me happy? And I decided to do that.
And you guys had children together?
No. In fact, we never ended up having kids.
You were together for 20 years without children in a monogamous relationship?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. I could have left at any time. Like why I didn't, I think I got very complacent. I was probably a little depressed because, I was just, my needs were not met. And I was,
Why didn't you have children?
Well, I've been told that I cannot have kids, but I also, from the age of 7, I said, I'm never having kids. But then when I met my ex-husband, I was like, well, maybe, but then after about 3 years of marriage, I was like, I really don't think I want to have kids. And he was like, well, I don't either. And I'm like, okay, this is great. Then we'll travel the world, we'll experience all that life has to offer. But he was so socially awkward and unfree that none of that stuff happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess you came out of that relation, like you probably burst it out of that relationship.
Yes, I did. I really did. And he's like, feels blindsided by it. He's like, I don't understand. And I'm like, oh, like, how could you not understand? But, he probably never will. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you and David met how? And how far after?
Yeah. So there's some overlap. So I knew David for about 10 years. Like, I owned a business, he owns a business, and we were in a business networking group together. And I was the chapter president. And so he was in my chapter. And so we had met 10 years prior in that group, and then kind of remained friends on Facebook. And then, in the last couple of years before I divorced, I had invited him over to my house for parties, and I was a real estate agent at the time. So I was doing an open house, and he waltzes into the open house, and I'm like, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, I'm going through a divorce, so I'm looking at houses. And I'm like, boy, and you didn't call me to be your real estate agent? And he's like, well, I already had one. I'm like, whatever, dude. So, but like, he gave me the nicest hug that I've ever felt. Like, it just enveloped my entire soul. And I'm like, wow, you give good hugs. And he's like, you do too. And that kind of like sparked something that day. I'm like, who's this guy? Like, I've known for 10 years, but not really known. Mm-hmm. And so then he sent me a referral for someone. And I found her house like after the second one we looked at. It was really easy transaction. So I messaged him and I'm like, hey, I got to take you out to thank you for that referral. So I took him out to a local place called Crow's Nest and bought him dinner and drinks. And through that course of the night, we start talking about Esther Perel and the ethical slut and all this stuff. And he just swipes all the dishes away out of our way and puts his hands down on the table and grabs my hands. And it was like sparks were flying because like we really connected emotionally, mentally, and physically. And he's like, I don't live very far from here. I'm like, I have to say no because it's like a first non-date. But I did surprisingly, I gave him a quick kiss and I'm like, that's all you get. And I left. So I left him wanting more. So, and that's how things started.
So sweet. So endearing. What have been like, and so I guess in that through line for now the past year and diving into kink, like having a somewhat of a kinky, like how did that unfold?
Gosh, it was really the first time we had sex. We talked about it a lot, and I was telling him that I really did like, spanking. I like to be dominated. I liked the hair pulling, all that stuff. And he was like, oh my God, I love that stuff too, and but I told him, I think I wanted the unicorn in a man, which is someone who was very sweet and loving outside of the bedroom and could communicate and do all that. But then in the bedroom, I want Mr. Dominant, who's telling me what to do, maybe a little rough, tying me up and making me wear collars and lacy clothing and racy clothing. And he absolutely can do that. And it's like a transformation. And I think it puts us both in like a subspace state when we're doing that. And it like, so we both have ADD and it like clears all the tabs out of our heads. And we actually have nothing rattling around in our brain. And we're able to like be that relaxed that I think most people probably are. It's just, we don't know what that's like.
Fascinating. I can see that. So it says it's putting both of you into the subspace, even though he's.
Well, it's mostly me, but I think afterwards he gets that subspace of like, it has fulfilled a deep need for him.
And when you say subspace, can you be more specific of how you define what that is?
Yeah, it's almost like meditative state. So, I want to say you're on autopilot, but that's not really it, because you're conscious of what's going on, but it's like that higher brain vibration you get when you are in deep meditation. So.
Have you studied like sub-dom BDSM?
I really haven't. I mean, I've read a few articles, and talked to a few people, but I've not really studied it much. And I didn't even know that was called subspace. David did. He was like, that's the term for it. And I'm like, oh, had no idea, but it's really awesome.
And do you do any role reversals? Do you ever play the dom role and him play the sub role?
No. But with women, I can do that. But for some reason, I don't want that from him. I don't want to dominate him at all. And I don't think he wants to be dominated either. So that works out. But I think I could be a switch, that way. But like, honestly, it's with women, and I'm not sure why that is.
I wonder, yeah, in the experience that I'm in, he can go back and forth, but there's he likes to be in the sub space. And I think because this is like the first time that I'm really playing in this realm of kink, although I can, look at my previous relationships and I see it's kind of nice because I can see even like my longest relationship was in my 20s, 25 to 30. And friends called me out at times because I was bossy. They're like, you're so bossy to him. And that was like shamed to be in. And maybe, yeah, in those moments, I was more like, I was into really health and fitness. And so my shaming was around like, you're not going to eat that, or that type of stuff. And
oh my God, that resonates with me because I used to be a personal trainer, and like, yeah, people used to tell me all the time, you're such a drill sergeant, and would shame me about that. So,
yeah. Yeah. And so it's been nice but it's like a, to be, for that behavior to be okay, to be like, it's okay to be bossy in this space. And I really like it. I'm like, oh my God, what's more? I want to like keep unwrapping more of that inside of me. And I think the embodiment of a human, like when you're so embodied, like they talk about the Madonna whore complex. And I think inside of us, there's the Madonna, the super loving human, as well as the fucking, like, I have the whore that just wants to come out.
Yeah.
And they both want to play together.
Yeah.
What I hear often is, and in people having these like ideas or fantasies, and they're terrified to bring them to their partner, because how do they bring it up? How do they say it? And there's so much, on both sides, like, your partner is conditioned to not accept what your kinks are. And so these veils then are over top of it. I had a call with a man recently, and he has been in a partnership for 3 years, and he's having these fantasies about other humans. And he said something like, my partner knows me like 98%. But there's this other 2% that is left and out, for fear of, I think it's probably fear on both ends. It's like a fear if I tell her that I won't be accepted, but also fear of the unknown. If they know this, like, what would even happen
Right.
with that as well. There's some comfort in withholding that.
Yes. I think that it's kind of like the forbidden, thing. So like if you're cheating on someone, sometimes it is that forbidden relationship that makes it attractive. And then once it's found out, it's like, I'm done with that now. Because now the veil is off. It's not as exciting. So I could see withholding that because that's its own kind of weird kink in a way. But also, I think men in particular are conditioned that if they're pegged by a woman, then all of a sudden they're less than a man. That their masculinity is going to be in question. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of them are fearful to bring that up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then I've even now realized, because I'm 42, and I'm
25.
And I have, my longest relationship was 25 to 30. So that was like 12 years ago, but that was before Esther Perel was even a thing. Like we did that relationship all on our own. I don't even think at that time period, this is like 2006 to 2011 ish in New York City. It was around that people weren't even yet talking about anxiety. Wasn't the buzzword.
Right.
Therapy. People were not talking about going to therapy. It was, we were living our high achievement, productive lives. I had started just tap into spirituality through studying Kabbalah, but, and in those, like my relational, I guess, quest and trauma has been twofold. Number one is the lies. My very first relationship, I had, I also been of unpacking, by the way, tension in a connection of having to, for me, is from earliest childhood, when I was in third grade, I remember there was a little boy who had a crush on me. I was a little girl at the same time. So he had a crush on me, and he would climb out of his chair during class, and he would climb to the back of my chair, and he would kiss the back of my chair. And that was like his thing. And then he would get yelled at by the teacher. Wow. And I would then the attention would also draw towards me, because that was like a constant outplaying, like a constant part of the play in third grade was like Shane Tavener likes Christina Weber, and this would happen in the class. And there was that tension because I'm 8 years old, but like, what do I do with a little boy? Like, I don't know what this is. Yeah. Like this, my doll babies would play together and, have families and all the things, but I don't know what I do as an 8-year-old. Like, ew, boys are gross. Like nobody else has boyfriends. Right. And then, so I kind of had this, that kind of tension energetic throughout my, young years, like that 8 to, through high school. Yeah. And my first love, where I lost, my virginity. It's so interesting that we use that term, lost your virginity.
Right. It's like, no, I found it.
Yes, totally. I found sex. I found deep pleasure. Yes. And we were together for 2 years. And then he went away to college. He was a year older than I was. And a year, I was planning to go. I was living in Maryland. He went to Arizona State University. I had planned to move out there and go to the same school with him, so we could then be together. Right. And I started getting like messages from subtle messages from his friends about him cheating. One of my girlfriends brought up and they're like, he's cheating on you. And I was like, what? But she didn't have the full story. It was like, she was hearing things through the grapevine and didn't know. Right. And I confronted him about it, and he would then, I would never, ever, ever cheat on you. Never. Like long letters about how amazing I am. And he would never, ever do that. But then his friends would be like, you're too good for him. I'm like, why is his friends telling me I'm too good for him?
Yeah, they don't match up. Yeah.
And they don't match up. And finally we went through this tumultuous, like I broke up with him. Then he broke up with me because I didn't, trust him. And then we just both broke up because it was tumultuous. And at that point, after I remember we were lifeguards at the pool and I was, we're on rotation and there was a girl in his class that was right ahead of me. And I said to her, it's like, Brad and I broke up. And she said, why'd you break up? And I said, because he's cheating on me. I didn't know the truth. No one had actually officially told me. And she goes, oh yeah, with Kelsey.
Oh.
And it's like, fucking finally somebody is telling me the truth.
Right. Like who it is. And like,
yeah. So that happened at the same time that my dad was cheating on my mom. And they were going through their separation. Yeah. And then my dad sat me on my steps at 18 and told me that he didn't love my mom anymore. And that was their way of separating. So years later, there was this deep confusion around love and sex tied together to that to some extent, because I couldn't fathom how the man who made me, who I loved most in the world, didn't love the woman who made me as well, who I loved the most in the world. How do they not love each other? That was really confusing. To now, years later, my dad and I recently lived in an RV together for a month during COVID, and I lived with him after he retired. Yeah, we traveled the East Coast. It was definitely a deep bonding experience, and
that's good.
And I butchered him at one point. I was like, how do you not love mom? This doesn't make sense. He's like, okay, I do. And I was like, great. Cause you didn't want to be in a relationship with anymore, but it didn't mean that the love goes away.
Right.
Like they can still be there. And I, in the story that you're sharing about the other woman, wanting love, like it, I find that out in society right now, there's so much heartbreak. Yeah. And so much longing and craving for love, but also confusion of even what love is, because I imagine, I'm just going to riddle with this for a moment, but like, I imagine that in that experience with this other woman, if she had invited in and she wanted to feel a loving connection and a loving experience, and you guys kind of got to define what that meant to her and how she felt that. Yeah. But for it to be during a scene thrown into the mix, and you don't even know, because people can say they want love, but you don't even know what that means. Like we all throw that word around. What does that even mean to you? Does that mean you're about to latch on to us? And like,
right. Like, yeah. It was like, does that, that could mean so many different things to each person, and love is also overused, which David and I talk about that in the very beginning of a relationship, how, saying I love you is overused. Like I can say I love you to a friend of mine. I can say I love you to my dog, but then I can also say I love you to David. And it means like three different things. So how do you know what that means? Right.
Yeah.
So, like I think if she had been able to slow down a little bit and build more of a connection with us first, I think this would have gone much differently. But I also feel like that was her deflecting, that she wants this love, but is incapable of being open to it. So she puts up this other stuff, like, ooh, come pee in my mouth, or, like tie me up, let's do those things. Let's not talk about how I really want connection. And so for David and I, we have this connection. We want to share this connection with someone else. That's part of it. We don't want to just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. So.
And so the love aspect of it is, the truthfulness, when you can really be yourself with another human being. And I can hear that from like that AOL or AOL connection. It started off with like, oh, we're not being truthful from the very beginning, and how I've landed in this connection that is so beautiful and unique, and opening myself up to these like kinky spaces is mainly because I'm like, oh my God, somebody is being so honest and truthful with who they are. This is endearing and inspiring to me that I'm getting a front row seat to see you. And it makes me, it's inspiring. It's like for the first time of like wanting to play. And so his fantasy is that he's had this fantasy that he would have his partner laying on top of him. Okay. And he would be, using his legs to hold her legs down and to wrap his arms around her chest. Mm-hmm. And then another human, a male, would enter her. Whoa. And he would essentially, she would be laying on him, and he would get to experience the sensations and feel the sensations in her body and her pheromones as they were, and her facial expressions, and to see that from there. And there is like something so erotic, like in that.
That's pretty hot. I have to admit. Yeah. And it's you're looking into his eyes while this other person is pleasuring you. Ooh, that's hot. I think
it's interesting. Yeah. Whose eyes would I be? I'd be looking into both of their eyes.
Well, true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so and I did do a scene. I did notice, I did our first scene together, which was, gosh, it's funny as I say this, I'm like, am I really releasing this? Like, who's going to listen to this? Mom, please don't listen to my podcast.
Your mom probably wants to do this too. So
I don't know. My mom is very mom-like. My mom is very, I think that they would.
She is.
Yeah. Although in full transparency, my mother did surprise me when I did have a breast augmentation when I was 23, 24. And when I did tell her I was doing it, I didn't tell her until like everything was scheduled and planned. I was flying to Arizona. I was getting it done. And she, she surprised me. She's like, why didn't I would have been there to help you. And actually when I told her, cause I said, I have to tell you something. She was like, I thought you were going to tell me you were pregnant. Like she was relieved that it was just that.
That's awesome.
And then she reminded me that my aunt had a breast augmentation as well. And, that could be a whole other topic of conversation. Yes. I have many other friends who are running to get their breast implants out. And I've gone through of that phase of being like, this is like, 15 years after getting them done and, really loving I did a mushroom ceremony at one point. I'm like, get these things out of me. And then I loved them back into myself. But even that, like the external shaming that we bring in so many different directions in the stories that we hear, and that is all contorted into our sex life. So how do you navigate, do you feel any, in your relationship, it's been a year. I imagine this, and it sounds like this is like the first time that you've brought another human being into it, that it was pretty much you guys deepening solo together for an entire year, dating other people, not dating other people. And I imagine the right time to bring somebody else in.
Right. So we've maintained from the beginning that we're both liking the ethical non-monogamy kind of relationship, where I don't think either of us are into poly. And we did go to some swinger events together, and it didn't have the appeal. It wasn't what we were really looking for, because typically in those things, you don't have that connection that we're looking for. It's just sex. And I'm sorry, I think I went off on a tangent here. What was your question again?
The time frame, and you're on that train of thought, like the time frame.
Yes.
I guess from the beginning, I think this is a really important piece. First off, from the beginning, you two were very communicative about sex.
Yeah. And about relationships and
which is a sort of a samurai skill to take in early on. Like there's a vulnerability in that, and also having to coming from experience, or even utilizing, like I could see a younger human being bringing that in based upon what they've seen externally, but it takes a level of consciousness and awareness that can come through experience to bring into the relationship from the beginning. Because I think a lot of people, where they get challenged, is that they've now been relating for 3 years or a period of time, and now they want to bring this, but it's like higher risk. We're further in. So if I bring this up, it could be shocking to another human being. So you started it from the beginning, but still, and then the ethical non-monogamy, you realize we're not poly.
Right.
How did you know these things, and how did you then frame ethical non-monogamy as well?
I've had a lot of friends that were poly, and I have current friends who are poly, and I see a lot of problems within that community. However, that wasn't really what keeps me from it. It's that I wouldn't want another person like living with us, and I also wouldn't want to share I guess I told David that I would always still want to feel like I was special. And so if he started dating someone else, that would be okay if it didn't change what is between us. So like if he stops giving attention to me and more to the other person, that's a problem, So I said, I recognize that I can get hyper focused on one person. And then if you bring in another one, he might not get the attention that he deserves, because now I've got this new relationship energy thing over here that is taking up my time. I said, so that dynamic I don't like, because I think that could be the beginning of the end, whereas with the labeling it, I guess, ethical non-monogamy means that you're not going to give 50-50 time to someone else. They might get like date nights with you every now and then. It might be just more of a friends with benefits kind of thing. But at least it's open that we can talk about those experiences with each other that we're having outside, which I think is huge. But we both admit there's that forbidden like fruit of like having a relationship on the side that maybe the other person doesn't know about. That part's exciting too. So, we've
both of you.
Yeah. So, but like, I said that I think that we would require each other to be open about those relationships. Otherwise, the level of trust would decrease. So, and the trust is what's the most important out of everything. So, trust that he's going to care for my heart. He's not going to just shatter it and be like, well, my dick needs this. So, you can't always think with your dick.
Yeah. Yeah. Alora Anana, who's one of my mentors, she talks often about, the special relationship. We want to feel that special connection that I have with you, what you don't have with anybody else, and it's ours. Actually, even too, of a friend recently had said to me that humans aren't special on their own. They're special through bonds. Like the bond is what creates the specialness of that human being.
Yeah.
So what other fantasies do you have?
He and I would love to have another woman that also likes to be submissive with him. And he has said that like he wants both of us tied up or, restrained in some way. And he's dominating both of us. But then I get to tell him what to do to her. And then she in turn can tell him what to do to me. And so then you're kind of dominating, the two women are dominating each other through him, which is kind of hot too. So there's that setup that we have in mind. There's also sex in like outdoor places where you might get caught. There's yeah. What else do we have? There's
wait, what was that? What was that?
No, I can't tell. Like, no.
What? Wait, what happened?
Okay, so he's got kids, right? And they are here sometimes. So there is that element of, could I give him a blowjob in the bedroom when they're out there in the living room watching television? And like, how much time do we have? Will we get caught? Those kinds of things.
Got it. Cute.
There is that element that, and I've had friends shame me for that, they're like, oh, can you do that when the kids are around? I'm like, I don't know.
And what else?
There's different elements of like whips and paddles and things like that that are exciting to me and to him as well. He's made me a nipple slut. So like I was never into like the nipple play. I was just like, whatever, they're there for feeding babies. I don't know what else they function for. And he's like, I'm going to change that. I'm like, try if you want. It's not going to work. It worked. He's like kind of a genius when it comes to that. I've just never been turned on by that. And the things he does, I'm like, wow.
Like what?
Well, he introduced me to like nipple clamps, which I had tried in the past, but like I was like, it just hurts. But he will like stimulate them first, then put them on, and then he might like take the whip to just the nipples, which is further stimulating. And then when he takes off those clamps, you get this rush of feeling, and it's like, oh, it hurts, but it feels good at the same time. It's like very interesting. I will admit this part. So I don't have kids, like I've said, but like I did ask him, I'm like, do women ever like orgasm when they're breastfeeding? Because it seems like you might do that. And he said that is a thing, and that some men really like breast milk. And I was like, well, I can't give you that. And he's like, there's hormones you can take that make you lactate. And I'm like, really? So like, I was kind of interested in that. So, I don't know. I might look into that. But the weird thing is like one time he's like just kneading my breast as he's suckling on the nipple. And like, it was almost like childlike, but it was a turn on. And I feel really shameful about that.
Sounds sexy.
I mean, it really was.
So. Yeah, like kinky, erotic, sexy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are the things that he says to you that brings out? Because I imagine that you're getting, your fantasies are expanding, like, and are getting more creative based upon the safety and connection that you feel in the container of the relationship with him.
Yeah.
What are some things that he says or does to attune to you, to enable you to feel this level of security and safety, to be free? Because it's almost like it's another level of freedom.
It is. Yeah. And getting past my own barriers of, what's right and wrong. I think often he'll just tell me, like with the whole nipple thing and like breastfeeding, he's like, well, yeah, that's an unknown thing, so he destigmatizes it by saying, yeah, lots of people enjoy this. You're not a freak, but for the most part, he just tells me to just, that he's never going to judge me for something I want to try. He might say like, yeah, I'm not into that, but he's not going to say like, you're a fucking freak and you need to leave. He's just, not that he would ever be that blunt anyway, but I mean, he's just very accepting and makes me feel safe by, saying that he accepts me for the way I am and what I bring to the table. So, which is not something I've ever had. I've never had someone tell me, I like you just the way you are. And he does that for me.
And how do you feel secure in that relationship, that this relationship is is a special relationship?
Yeah. I honestly think it's through the communication. Just because I'm 52 and in my entire life, I've never had someone who could communicate effectively, whether it be friendship, a parent, past, spouse, boyfriends, girlfriends. No one could communicate, and they were always so guarded with who they really were. And he's not like that, and just very open and accepting. And I'm that way for him as well. And so then I feel like it just creates like this vortex for us of just draws us in, and we keep wanting more and more. And some of that too, I hate to admit, is like past traumas. So like, I don't want to say it's trauma bonding, but like, I found out when my stepdad died that he and my mom were swingers back in the day, and that she was bisexual and she was having sex with, people outside her race. And why that's important is because she was a little bit racist. To me, she wouldn't let me date anybody who wasn't white. And she was very much of like, you're going to be straight. You're not going to college. You're going to marry a guy. You're going to have kids. This is your life. And yet she was living this complete lie with my stepdad, a lie to me, because she was like saying you need to do this, but she was doing this other thing on the side. Had she been vulnerable with me and said, hey, Jack and I are doing this, it's good to be open. You should explore your sexuality. Had she done that, that would have been huge for me. But the fact that she just lied and kept it all a secret was hurtful.
And why do you think she did that?
I think she felt she was protecting me, or she didn't want me to judge her, I'm sure. And so for me, that's really sad, because I've been kind of the one that just lays it out on the table. And if you judge me, then fuck off. You're not my people. And I think it would have changed my relationship with my mom in a profound way if she had been able to confide in me.
How do you're so open. Thank you for being so open. And how do you discern your expression of yourself when you're in connection with others? Like, are you revealing? Because relationships is for me, I think this is the most interesting conversation point to be having with anyone. Like if I'm socializing in any public space, like this is the shit I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about really anything else. I want to talk about love and sex and
me too.
And your demon. But there's people are in their own journeys, and sometimes it can be shocking to other people, or it can be confronting, especially if I imagined maybe 10 years into your marriage, if you or your future self had walked in and opened up the conversation, there might have been a little bit of like oh, whoa.
Yeah.
That's like, I have 10 more years before I can get to that. It's like, what are you talking to me about this right now for? Like, I'm not there yet.
Right.
How do you
journey? Yeah. Everyone's got their path.
Yeah. So. How do you be fully expressed while also socializing or connecting with other beings that might not be where you're at?
Yeah. I exclude coworkers now because that really alienated me. If I thought I was friends with coworkers and would start to talk about stuff like this, they would generally then start ghosting me. And I really felt like, looking back on it, I think that they were uncomfortable because they could not face those things within themselves. At the time, I thought it was because they thought I was some like disgusting whore, and maybe they did. I don't know. But, I really do feel that often when I'm open about things like that, people get really uncomfortable because they have not yet dealt with that within themselves. And so then I decided, fuck it, I'm going to make people uncomfortable because I think people need to think about these things, whether it's sex or relationships or politics, whatever it is. I think that people need to quit avoiding and burying their head in the sand and start bringing these things up, because I think there's so many bad relationships out there, so many, and so many of us stay in them for way longer than we should. And I don't know. I think after some good therapy and Esther Perel and David and my relationship with him, I'm now got the a heightened fuck it attitude, that like, if you think I'm too much, go find less.
So. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck it all. Like, I'm going to be real. That's it. Last question for you that's coming through my mind is, this bringing like love into the kink space, or that feeling. Like I think of if I'm with a partner and I'm going to play with a third, I would want them to feel connected and loved throughout that experience, and well nurtured and cared for. I think aftercare, as I think you talked about how one of the reasons why that you and David, your trust grew for him after that experience was partly due to the aftercare. Mm-hmm. And I imagine too, another element to it that probably was bonding was overcoming the challenge, doing something together. Even Esther Perel's first TED Talk, she discusses the 3 secrets to a long-term relationship. And those 3 secrets being is that, number 1, there's an opportunity to miss each other and to come back together. So that's like longing and missing. Number 2 is when you see your partner do something that you didn't know they had the ability to do. Like you see them on stage, or you see them give a talk or something that they've worked hard on that you're like, wow, you see them with these new eyes. Yeah. Or 3 is that you overcome a challenge together. Like you build a house, or you have a kinky experience,
Right.
or you navigate some type of social situation. Mm-hmm. So imagine with you and this other person, there was that element of, whatever the aftercare was. And I'd love to hear about that, but plus the navigating the social aspect to the connection with her and how it's treated. So I guess my question is a two-part question is, if you could share a little bit about that aftercare experience, and also too, of what's, just as I rampage for a moment, like what's also coming through with aftercare is, I've also heard that's really important if in non-monogamous relationships that there's kind of a claiming after that experience. Like if you were to go out with somebody else, that when you came home, there's like a reattachment with you and your partner. So I imagine in that aftercare experience, there's like a reattachment of the coupledom that happens. And then how do you inject a loving experience for a third person that you're bringing into, so they're not just necessarily objectified and
right
playing a role in your story, but they actually are in their own way as well, and it's loving for them too.
Right. Well, okay, so the aftercare was us like laying in bed together, talking over what had happened. And we shared like what parts were turn-ons for us and why. So what I found was that the turn-ons for him were watching me engage, and mine were also watching him engage. So it wasn't that, he's just out there getting strange, he was engaging in how it was affecting all three of us, but mainly me. And and then we talked about, what we wouldn't, what we would have changed, what we would do differently for the next time, and if we were going to continue something with this current person or not. We talked about red flags that we saw, and turns out we were on the same page for everything, so that was helpful. And then there was just, a lot of holding and caressing and kissing and just, connecting that way. And I think that we, like you said, we both agreed that we didn't want this to be just sex with no other substance to it with this third person. And we weren't sure that we wanted to spend the time to help her work on being vulnerable. So we would want someone that was just ready out of the box, so to speak, that was ready to be vulnerable and to be part of a relationship. And she's not there. And so we weren't willing to put in that work right now with that. So we'll have to have like the breakup talk, with her to say that we just don't think this is a good fit. And continue on, looking. And then what was the other part?
Well, before I jump into that, I have another question. So, like female to female, you're looking for this partner. So I remember hearing younger, they'd always say, if you're looking for a babysitter for your kids, like don't get a hot babysitter.
Right.
Is there anything of when you're looking for, like, I don't know, like to go through your mind, like find somebody special and good looking, but make sure they're not too special. Like, does that?
Yes. I hate to admit that, but like if I have told him, like, what if you meet someone who's like Sydney 2.0 that is like me, but just a little bit better, maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit prettier.
Yeah, I could say that if I know you're 52, I'm 42, but I could even think of you if I was 52, like how would I feel about bringing in someone who was like, late 30s, 40s. For me, I can think about like if I brought in someone who was in their 20s, how would that?
Right. Yeah. So, like I'll use you for an example if you don't mind, because I think you're beautiful and you're like in the right age range and you have this vulnerability and this kink and this excitement. And I'm like, what would happen if we brought Christina in? Because you're fit and, he really loves fit women. So, and I'm fit, but I'm 52 fit, I'm not 40 fit anymore. And so would I feel, a little jealous? I mean, I don't know. I think that probably depends on the other person. So like if you were looking for your other in a man, I might feel a little threatened. I'd be like, oh shit, this could happen. And then I'm going to be the third wheel, but David and I discussed these possibilities, and he said, well, the way around that is that we are always in good communication and talking to each other. And if either one of us feels like it's spinning out of control, then we can stop, and derail that for a bit. And so knowing that he's not going to be like, well, we're just going to go ahead and keep doing this because it's what I want, and that was comforting. And I told him, I'm like, I really won't know if I'm going to be jealous or not until we're in it, so it's kind of, there's this element of unknown.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like the hypotheticalness. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. Cause I can think of, as me going into the kink space, I can be like, what if I used to always want to date a couple. Actually, when I was in my just a few years ago, and I went on that app Field and I was like looking through couples, and my reasoning for wanting to date a couple was because I wanted to eradicate any jealousy that I had felt for and wanted to be of witness to a couple so I could see their like to be of witness to like their love that they have for each other.
Right.
And so I think from an intentionality perspective of like, I just say, I'm not putting this out there, but just for the conversational elements, like I think it's the intention of what's the other person.
Yes.
So I'll say for, is it that they're coming in and they, I would say if you were going that route of finding somebody like me would actually be ideal, because you want somebody who would want to witness a strong love together and be in support of that strong love together.
Yes.
But have the intention of like, that's their intention, like to experience that love together. Maybe even that person does want a primary partnership, but they're not interested in drama or ripping something else apart. But there's Francesca Gentile, and I think Francesca's work, right? She did.
I don't. I'm sorry to admit that.
She was one of the Relate Fest, which is where I met David.
Okay.
She was one of the headliners at Relate Fest. Okay. She calls herself 66 sexy. And she's been teaching BDSM for years. And, oh dear, why did I bring her up? She talks about, in a previous episode, like the hormones that you want to feel in an experience. And sort of like of looking at sex as like this, there's a level of extremes, like on the spectrum of extreme sports. Like some people want to go and they want to put those wingsuits on and fly out of a plane because there's a rush of hormones that they want to feel in that experience.
That's David, by the way.
Yeah. So I think from the most healthy dynamic of finding, and I remember as well. When my interest started to spike around this, and I had the fantasy about dating a couple, I was at this party in Ojai with they call it like the quote unquote conscious community in Los Angeles, and I was sharing about my work in organizing dating events, and one of a couple said to me, like, why don't you do something for like us to find our unicorns? Like, we want a unicorn party to find our unicorns, because they were just, they said, like, when they go on the app, oftentimes they don't find it's usually people with drug addictions or some type of woundings, as opposed to fully like conscious. So can you organize a party for unicorns? And that's when it peaked in my head. I was like, oh, this is interesting to me. And so
well, there's a lack of quality unicorns out there.
Yeah. And where I think that actually could potentially be, I'm totally ripping on this, but like it's almost if there was like, it's like a mentor-mentee relationship. It's almost like a surrogate experience.
Yeah.
Like that a couple is so strong together that they're willing to, through their love, because this is the most expression, I think, of love, is they're willing to have an experience with somebody who wants that healthy dynamic, but hasn't seen it because we're lacking relationship role models. So role modeling, you guys are going to role model love through this experience to another human being, and like open them up to the possibilities. I think that's the great way to do it.
That is amazing. Now you got my brain working on that.
Because then it's never a threat. And the kind of, I do think that there is a hierarchy structure in this experience. Like, let's name it. I think people I've seen and want to dilute primary. I recently read Jessica Fern's Polysecure. And
I was going to say, don't they call it anchoring and poly? Isn't that the term?
Yeah, but she also talks about there's also 9 hierarchy poly. My brain still can't wrap around. Maybe her second book will help me understand that. I got to the end of Polysecure, and she said that don't expect your partner to spend their birthday with you, because it's their birthday and they can do whatever they want on their birthday. And I was like, oh, I don't think I'm poly. Like, yeah, I'm not doing, I'm not doing that. Like, you're spending your own. Like, nope. It's your birthday. It's my birthday. It's our birthdays together. Like, I don't think I can do this poly, but yeah. I think that's, for me, from the kinky perspective of the other way of thinking of being the third, if my intentions around that would be to have a love-filled experience, but to be in the essence of the love of 2 other people and in celebration of that, and also them loving me. So it's like they're loving me as a unit. Yep. And that's like something that I hold sacred in that experience. And that feels like the most healthy way to do it.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
Now my other question, I mentioned aftercare and how do you bring love into, so maybe from your perspective, how would you bring love into that type of container?
With another person?
Yeah, for the third person. That's like the vulnerable person, because they're kind of the most vulnerable.
Right.
Maybe not, but they should be the most vulnerable. I think that person should be the most vulnerable, because you have 2 in 1.
Yeah, because they have more to lose, I feel, in some ways. Just because they're going to lose 2 people. Or they're going to maybe be rejected by 2 people, if we decide it's not going to work out, and then you've got two people saying, you're not right, which can feel like that would be hard. And that's why I'm like kind of dragging my feet, even talking to this other woman right now about it, is because I don't want her to feel bad, but
yeah. Well, I also think from an agreement standpoint to go into it, I mean, I guess, yeah, how do you arrange it? Because it's like you want to be in the present moment and experience by experience, but you don't want to go in and promise like this is going to happen again and again and again. Like we've never had it. Let's have it happen once before we decide if it's going to happen again. And why is it even happening? And
right. So I think, so to get back to how would I bring the love for the third person that we're bringing in, I think that like a deep friendship probably is where I would go. But not like, I don't want to triangulate, where her and I are talking about David, or David and her are talking about me, like maybe I piss off David one day and he goes to her and talks to her about it. I don't want that kind of crap going on. What I want is like, any problems between me and David or between me and him, and we talk about those. But between me and her, I want like a friendship where maybe I can help her in other aspects of her life, like maybe jobs, friends, navigating other relationships, things like that. But I am like someone who loves to help people, which is why all the jobs I've had in my life. So when you talk about mentoring, like that speaks to me, because that is kind of what I do anyway. And it's also what David does. So it's quite interesting that you pick up on that. So, I mean, that is kind of what I see myself in with this other person, is like that kind of a friendship. And definitely the modeling. So like, he's got a young cousin and niece that are like in their early 30s. And I find that I'm modeling in front of them how to have a good relationship, because they both have kind of crappy relationships with parents and lovers and whatever. And so I can see myself doing that as also with this third person. But then, also, I guess what I want to do is what David does for me, which is the nice and loving outside of the bedroom. But then in the bedroom, you're going to be my kink monster. So.
fascinating. Yeah, I can see of like whatever profile that you have could be one of the healthiest ways to say, like, do you want relationship role models?
Yeah.
We love to be that for you.
I like this.
Yeah. And you can witness really healthy, solid love. And we love someone to be in support of that healthy, solid love. And we'll show you great love in that whole entire experience. That sounds like the expansion of love.
Right. Yeah. Rather than I'm taking from you, and
it's even like what I always invite into each of the relationship of these four pillars of a conscious relationship, which is no attachment to outcome. Growth comes first.
Yes.
Both parties, or all parties in this situation, agree to own their own shit. Mm-hmm. All feelings are welcome and no internal process is condemned. And this is a place to practice love.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll,
fucking brilliant, Christina.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we're going to go into this kink space, like, we can, and have these conversations, because, I could even, like inspired. I'm like, this would be cool to have a kink circle, like, where to talk through of, cause even again, now I rewind back, 5 years ago when these beautiful couples said to me that to host parties for them to find their unicorns. And also, the lacking of relationship role models, I can see for myself in this, dynamic that I'm experiencing I do feel a little like confused by it at times. And not knowing where I go to have conversations around it. I imagine, I mean, I know there's kink therapists and all the things out there. And so there are people, but I'm surrounded by intimacy experts and relationship experts. And I haven't heard, I feel like this is the peak of a conversation. And I'm a part, not only the Esther Perel discussion group, like I follow the healing after infidelity and
Yes.
like all these heartbreak communities. And it's essentially people suppressing bits and pieces of themselves. So to be in these spaces, and for me to also like, I think I'm only just realizing of, I want some type, like, I've been monogamous in a committed relationship for 5 years. And I've always thought that I would only want monogamy. But at the same time, 5 years historically, the longest I've done. And I remember at the end of that 5 years, I was Googling, like, what can we do to enliven our sex life? And how can this, like, and at that point, I never came across kink. Like that was still not a thing. And
Right.
And I think a little bit of what happened to me, because at that first loving relationship at, 15, 16, when I started having sex and open up and blossom, it was then coupled, then all of a sudden a lie came in and it stunted. I think there was a little stunt in my sexuality because it closed. I was so open, and it was really confusing that, by the way, this particular guy, I did do a reality TV show about a year and a half ago called X-Rated, where I brought in, I sat with 3 of my exes and they rated me before that event, before we all sat with Andy Cohen on, like on the big lights and stage and everything. And I sat with each of the 3 exes. And they rated me on, initiation, affection, spontaneity, all these different categories. But that ex from childhood, I reached out to him and see if he wanted to be part of the show. And he said to me that I'm only going to, I'll do this because we were so young at the time. But I don't think I'd do this with any other girlfriend, because essentially he's cheated on every single girlfriend since me. Like, it didn't stop. He's now like 44, 43 years old. And historically, every single fucking girlfriend he's cheated on, and it's created office drama. It's like, I guess there's something, I don't know, in his makeup. Cause I'm looking at him like, did you not discover polyamorous, like open relationships at this point? It's like, what is it? Why do you keep doing this? Like, what? And another time I remember being on a plane at one point, this is probably about a year and a half ago. And I'm sitting next to this like really handsome guy who eventually I could see I had a ring on, but he was taking to me, and I could feel some energetics there. And me working in the relationship space, we deepened into conversation really quickly. And he had shared with me as we walked to get our luggage together and to get the Uber station together, that he has cheated on his wife like over 50 times.
Whoa.
Yeah. And he had just done it that weekend.
Oh my God.
And she had found out, so they were working on it, but like he couldn't stop. Like there was a something inside, and I'm just thinking like why? Like, I just want to know my own reality. Like, I just want to know the truth of what is out there. And then I get to act in free will of my own experience. But if you're not giving me yourself, then like, this is a false reality and I'm not interested in being a part of it. So this concept of like kink surrogacy or kink mentorship is really of interest to me. I want to sexually explore, but I've also never I never wanted to do it alone.
Right.
Like, I just don't feel comfortable. I've been to the sex parties recently, and I'm just not, I think I'm a little old for that experience, because when I go to those spaces, I'm looked up to as the organizer and the mentor, and to the younger people who are there at those parties. But then and I kind of have, they know me in position, so I can feel that, like, kind of watching of like, what's Christina going to do? And so I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. But if this person that I'm seeing right now, I've been like, I want to go explore that with you, because, he's more, just like, he's solid in who he is. And I feel comfortable around him. And I think because he has this 25 years of kink experience, he can ground me into that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for this juicy, interesting conversation today.
I know I want to have more, but I guess I do have to go back to work at some point.
Totally. Anything that you're feeling like, before we wrap up the conversation, that if for anyone listening on this podcast, is there anything that you want them to know after we've just opened their minds up to probably think about things that they might have not think about? Like, what would your aftercare be for somebody who is listening to this podcast?
Yes. Never feel that you're less than, that we're all on our own journey, but do try to be authentic with yourself. Don't lie to yourself. Get right with yourself, and then you'll be able to open up and have the relationship of your life that's just going to blow your mind, because you're able to accept yourself first. Yeah, totally. All those layers and the fears inside of there. Yes.
And be willing to go and look at them and share them vulnerably. That's where I love the whole, all feelings are welcome and no internal process is condemned, because as you speak those fears out into the world, you can begin to release those fears as well. Yeah.
And anyone who shames you for your fears or your wants and needs is not someone that should be in your life.
Yeah. Thank you, Sydney, for this conversation. Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Deepen with Christina. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, give it 5 stars. It helps more people find it. Helps me continue to have these really interesting, fascinating conversations, and to share those conversations with you. And again, I'd love to be with you in person. Go to wedeepen.com, see all up and coming social transformational experiences. I have a new offering in the works, Epic Love Club. So stay tuned for that, and I'll share more about it soon. Okay, bye for now.